New Yorkers around the Empire State celebrating today. Mets are headed to the World Series, and on the top of that list celebrating perhaps could be SNY Sal Licata. You hear him debate the Mets and New York sports almost every night on Loud Mouse at 5:30 and Sports Night as well with Chris Carlin. And Sal, how you feeling today, baby?
I mean, it is honestly hard to believe. I think I'm still kind of in shock as the New York Mets are going to the World Series. It is hard to believe.
What's the hardest aspect of the Mets going to the World Series to believe?
Well, I think it's just been the struggles over the years. I mean, for so many years, since I've been doing regular on-air work in 2010, and obviously you could date back to the Mets to the collapse in 2007, I mean, they have been awful. I mean, I'm talking about, I just remember constantly ripping them, and Murphy and Duda and all these bums that they've had on the team, and this is a joke. When are they going to play competitive baseball? And watching it year after year, and the team not trying. And then even earlier this year, where they got off to a good start, but then they had injuries, and it was obvious that they needed a piece or two, before they made all those acquisitions and started to turn the corner. So to go from that and to live in that every single day for the last 5-6 years, to now be sitting here watching essentially a lot of the same guys who have now developed and the Mets have been patient with, the likes of Duda and Murphy and guys like that, and to see it happen and to see it at this level and now have them going to the World Series in 2015, a year that they were talking about was the future, 2014, 15, 16, those will be our years. To see it happen is it's remarkable. It's honestly astonishing.
And the way they're doing it, Sal, I mean, up 3-0 in Wrigley, I'm like, all right, they're going to lose tonight, and then they'll win back at City. No, they break out the brooms. That's unbelievable, right?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. After they beat Arrieta on Sunday night, right, for Game 2, I thought they were going to sweep. It's one of those things where if you're so close to the situation, sometimes you don't, it's hard to see. But if you step back and look at it, this is how sweeps happen. I mean, they beat him with Harvey in Game 1, and he silenced the Cubby bats that were hot coming out of their division series with the Cardinals. Game 2, if they don't win that with Arrieta, I don't care if they're going home or not. Their pitching stinks. Kyle Hendricks, I mean, that's embarrassing. Jason Hamill, the Mets will hit those guys. And to boot, they had Jacob deGrom going in Game 3, and I love Steven Matson. Obviously, he pitched last night. So when you looked at it that way, after the first 2 games were played, I felt they were going to sweep. But you're right. I mean, the Mets have never swept a 7-game series in their history, and they never trailed once in the series the way that they didn't just sweep. They embarrassed the Cubbies. They put it to them.
Sal Licata of SNY with Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team, born and raised Mets fan. Sal, as you look at the Mets, obviously it's a team collaboration, but if you give the credit to one person, who do you give it to?
For what now? You're talking about the whole year or just this series?
Mets are going to the World Series. Who gets the credit?
Oh, man, if I had to pick one person, I guess it would have to be Sandy Alderson, although a lot of the people that are there and contributing, deGrom and Harvey and Matt, a lot of these guys were drafted under the Omar Minaya regime. But I'll give Alderson credit for not being overreactive, for being ultra patient and letting these guys develop and not trading any of the young arms and putting a plan in place and trimming the payroll down, to make ownership happy and just cleaning, trimming the fat, so to speak, over the last several years. And this was his plan. Keep the young pitching, make a couple of huge trades, obviously with R.A. Dickey getting Darno and Syndergaard. I mean, Alderson's the one who put it together, ultimately put it together and got them here. So if there was one guy, I'd probably have to credit the GM.
How crazy is that? Because before the trade deadline, Mets fans are getting ready to riot because it looks like you're not going to make a move. Finally, the moves are made, the marquee one being bringing Cespedes in, and now Sandy Alderson goes from 0 to hero.
Well, right, but I think you nailed it, right? So if he's patient all these years and not doing anything and frustrating the fan base to a point where, people were going to revolt if they didn't make a move this year because we knew they had a team that had the potential to go to the World Series with that pitching. They needed some bats. So Alderson, though, had the right timing to pull the trigger to first add Kelly Johnson and Juan Uribe to the bench and bring some major leaguers on this team, then bringing up Conforto, and then obviously, as you mentioned it, making the big splash. Now, look, he got lucky, too, because Cespedes was down on the list. He wanted Carlos Gomez, wanted maybe Jay Bruce and Justin Upton more. than Cespedes, but he made the move for Cespedes, didn't hold back on the prospects. He went for it. He saw what needed to be done, and he did it, and it all has come up roses for the Mets. So that's why you have to give him the credit.
SNY Sal Licata, Loudmouths at 5:30 several times a week, and then Sports Night as well with Chris Carlin. What do you make? You mentioned Daniel Murphy and bagging on him for years. What do you make out of what he's doing?
I mean, Murph was my whipping boy for years. He couldn't defend. It drove me nuts. Didn't hit with power. Doesn't run with speed. It doesn't run well on the base pass. I mean, to see what Daniel Murphy is doing, honestly, it's a perfect culmination because it's just a complete shock. I mean, I'm sitting there watching this last night and watching the celebration and watching Daniel Murphy be presented the NLCS MVP trophy. I got to tell you, it is the least likely of events I'd ever thought I would see in my entire life. So to have Murphy dominating the way that he is, the one thing that he's done, he's always hit consistently, and he's always hit good pitching consistently. He's just never hit with power. So that's the biggest difference. And I think I saw a stat the other night or last night that said 16 hits for Murph and only 12 swings and misses. That is just he is playing like Babe Ruth, which is just impossible for me to comprehend. But you know what? Well deserved because he puts in hard work all the time, always trying to get better as a baseball player, as a defender, as an all-around player. And obviously focusing on these at-bats here. But he has just been off the charts. I can't believe it.
Sal, your Twitter is riddled with, this is hard to believe. This doesn't feel real. Do you believe it yet that the Mets are going to the World Series?
No, I still don't. I mean, I'll believe it when Game 1 comes Tuesday, and whether it's Kansas City or Toronto, I'll believe it then when the whole universe is focused in on the Mets. And this is different, too, than the last time they were here 16 years ago, because in 2000, I always felt they got robbed. That was not a true World Series. That was a Subway Series. And regardless of the result, because the World Series had to be shared with the Yankees, so it wasn't the focus on the Mets. Baseball world wasn't focused on the Mets. New York wasn't focused on the Mets. It was split between the Yankees and Mets in the Subway World Series. So this is the Mets' first true World Series, as far as I'm concerned, since 1986, and I think that will be special, regardless of who makes it, Kansas City or Toronto.
And who do you think the Mets would prefer, Kansas City or Toronto?
Well, if it's me, I want Toronto. I think Kansas City, people are looking at the Mets as maybe a team of destiny. Well, look at Kansas City. They were here last year. They're a proven team. They're an experienced lineup. They're a clutch team. They are built for the postseason with that lineup, with that bullpen, defense, speed. They have home field over the Mets. So I think Kansas City would have a little bit of an advantage. I mean, you also look at it, they should have been eliminated by the Astros last week. They were down there, down 3 runs. Everybody figured it was over. Nobody thought they would beat the Blue Jays. So I think if the Royals hang on and win this, I think they'll be very dangerous because they make up for their lack of starting pitching with the bullpen. Toronto, they have a great lineup. We already saw that with the Cubbies. So the Mets could silence that starting pitching. The Mets could silence that lineup with their starting pitching, and Toronto doesn't have enough pitching to slow down the Mets. So I think they beat Toronto in a quick series, and I think the Royals will go 6 or 7.
Sal Licata of SNY. Watch him as the Mets continue their amazing postseason journey. You get the passion and energy out of this guy at Sal_Licata on Twitter. Sal, let's keep doing this, all right? We're probably going to bug your ass again next week. Let's keep going.
Hard I hope you do, man. I want to celebrate with you guys. It's so hard to believe. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.